What's up, everybody? We're back to talk more fantasy football. I am trying to do a broadcaster YouTuber voice. Don't know if it's going well, but we're going to go for it. Eventually, I'll have my own catchphrase. I've got big dreams for this channel and this podcast. But we're back again, and Raymond put together an agenda for us this week. So I don't know if he wanted to tee it up, but I'll pass it over to you, my friend.
And so my thinking behind the agenda for this week was really we're in a bit of a dead zone for fantasy football content. Unlike what the most of the industry would like you to think, there's not really a lot happening. So I was kind of racking my brain, what could we talk about? And I realized we've done a lot together. We work together. We're playing leagues together. We haven't talked shop as much as this recently, and I thought maybe be a good time to kind of get to know a little bit more about you and you vice versa. You can get to know a little bit about me as far as how we play the game, our approach. And I think it was instructive to anybody that would be listening to us as to, and this kind of goes to our bona fides, like why do we do what we do and why do we think we are reasonably good at what we do?
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I see that the first question you had, and I think that's a great idea because to your point, like voluntary OTAs, man, like I know we're a fantasy podcast, but I've got to go off on a quick rant. I saw something about the fact that Lamar Jackson wasn't at voluntary OTAs, and I'm like, they're voluntary. And
Oh
they're
yeah.
voluntary for a reason, like it's not going to tell you a lot. Like, yeah, sure, the rookies can show out and have a couple nice catches, but it's not going to be at full speed. It's not going to be in pads. It's going to be from the third string quarterback and against the third string cornerback. Like, if a receiver has a one handed catch, like, just don't hold on to it. Like, it could show something, but it's not as important as they would want you to think, right?
Absolutely.
June and July are pretty rough, right? We got the draft in April. We got the schedule release towards the end of April. May, everybody's all hyped. June and July, it's like, I hope nobody gets hurt. And then we do our drafts in August, right? Um, but the first question that you had was like, who am I as a fantasy player? And you put in a couple prompts like risk taker, data driven, etc. I want to say that I'm a risk taker. I mean, there's some data in there. There's absolutely some data in there. But if I have a good gut feeling about a player that I think's going to go, they're going to perform better than their ADP or better than their projections on the week once we get into actual fantasy. I have plugged in a player who's projected at 9 over a player who's projected at 15 because I just have this gut feeling. Now, that's not entirely frequent, but it does happen from time to time. And I think the risks that I take are calculated because I don't necessarily trust the projections, and the ADP can be skewed, right? Like, one player's ADP could be 20 when it ought to be 35, but everybody's drafting them high because of what they did 3 years ago. Um, or vice versa. It could be at 35 and it should be at 20 because everybody's drafting them for what they did 3 years ago when they had a worse quarterback or a worse line. They just look at the player's name. They don't think about all those factors. So a little bit of both. I do like to take risks sometimes, and one thing I am not a homer. There are very few Ravens players that I will willingly draft onto my team, and I've always been that way. I'm actually a little bit more averse to drafting Ravens players on my team because I'm worried that I'm going to overdraft them because of my biases.
Mhm.
So I very rarely have any Baltimore Ravens on my team. I think last year I had Zay in one league, and I'm glad I did. Right, grabbed Keaton Mitchell before he was playing because I saw what he did in the preseason, and I was glad I did, and then I was heartbroken. But I'm not over here drafting Rashad Bateman like this is his year. Sorry, Bate, but like you got to prove something to me first. I think Lamar's probably going to be drafted too high this year, so I definitely draft. I draft data driven, but I also look at the data and ask myself if I believe it or not, and then add my own opinions in there, if that makes sense. And that's how I play week over week too, projection wise.
100%. I think we're very similar in that way. I'm going to go in reverse order to what you were talking about. I too am not a homer in that way. Similar to the way I would gamble on games, I hate gambling on my own team because it's
Mhm.
much harder to separate the emotion that I have attached to those teams into how I feel about how the game might turn out. Like it's just sadly for me, it's almost always more negative than it actually would be. But point being, I just don't have a good gauge. So I don't like gambling and I don't like owning them as fantasy players because it feels like I'm taking two L's on some
Yep.
weekends. I'm just like, I don't really need this in my life. I'm not averse to having JJ on my team. Jefferson, not
Right.
McCarthy. Um, but I don't ever try to shoot for it. And if anything, I will try to avoid it.
Right.
Um, I have always been more data driven, and I'm trying to switch to an intuitive nature. And to do that, I've decided to inundate myself with so much content that it's impossible to follow one data trend because you have the data, but then you have the interpretation of the data, which can go different ways. So I really just try to get as much information in my brain as possible, but then in the end, it's almost always intuition. And to your point about going with my gut over what the rankings say, I have done both, and I always feel worse when I don't go with my gut. It's almost like, well, okay, I really believe in this player, but this guy's ranked higher. Which one am I going to feel better about the next day if I do or don't make that decision? And I'm always going to feel better and especially enjoy it if it goes well. Like if I go with my gut call instead of being a slave to the rankings.
Yeah, well, and on that note too, right? That's the difference between somebody who's like probably gonna make the playoffs as like my leagues generally have buys, so like usually it's a 12-man league and six get the playoffs, right? But one and two get a bye. Who's gonna be the 5 or 6 seed and who's gonna be the 1 and 2 seed? And the difference there is you have to make the right call, right? Like we'll use JJ McCarthy as an example, but it's a very extreme example, and it's just because you said JJ, and thank you for clarifying um, who you meant by that. Um, but my thing there is you have to know like there's gimmies, right? Like you're always going to start Travis Kelsey. You're always going to start Christian McCaffrey. You're always going to start Justin Jefferson. But in no world should you ever start JJ McCarthy because you have a good feeling that he's going to have a good week when Patrick Mahomes is your other quarterback,
Oh, that's the
right?
definition of just getting too cute. Like you
Well,
can go
right,
with your gut to a
exactly.
point, but like
Exactly. And but you do have to make those calls for like the players that you didn't draft in the first round because if you draft a player in the first round, like they're a weekly starter. Like that's what it should be. They're a top player at their position, 1, 2, or 3.
yep.
Um, but those middle round picks, and I'll give you an example, right? One player who helped me a lot, and talk about not being a homer because it hurt my soul to do this. But for some reason, I just
Is this a
have this
Steeler or a
feeling that
Brown?
Jerome Ford, it's a Brown, it's a Brown. I just had this
It's
feeling
not what
about
I mean.
Jerome Ford on Thursday night, sitting on my parents' couch. I was down there to watch football with him or something, and I picked him up in all 5 of my leagues. And I love Nick Chubb. I hate what happened to Nick Chubb. But that's just that gut intuition where for some reason I thought no matter what the reason would be, this player is going to have a good second half of the year. And he won a couple games for me. He had some games where he went off. Now, granted, I wish it had happened where he was playing alongside Nick Chubb, being that second back pass catcher. I don't wish Chubb got hurt. But everybody texts me, how the hell did you know to pick up Jerome Ford? I'm like, I didn't. I just kind of took a shot, right? And those are the shots that you take that get you further into the playoffs, that give you a chance at winning that championship. Because it's as much about not just who you draft, who you pick up throughout the week. And if you have waivers in your league, which every league should have waivers, right? You need to make sure that you're picking players up a week before you think they need to be picked up. Because if you wait until Chubb goes down, somebody's going to have waiver priority over you, and everybody's going after Jerome Ford. You need to be one of those first guys, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, well, you need to look for matchups coming up, and you need to especially look for little breakouts, like things that happen in game where you're like, that's definitely going to build trust with the coach. That player is definitely going to get more run. Or you see, like you just there's just little things that will happen that give you that vibe that something is going to be on the horizon for this or that person. I was also on the Jerome Ford game plan. I
Not in
owned
our
him in
league, you weren't.
Dynasty. Huh?
Not in our league, you weren't.
No, 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 no. No, this was in one of my Dynasty leagues. But Yeah, and that's the fun of the game. And for me, a couple years ago, and this happens, I think NHL fantasy has this thing where we'll start the higher ranked players or higher projected players. Like whoever has the highest projection, it starts them automatically. And that was the driving force behind stopping doing that. It's just like I don't want the computer decisions. Like this, it's not a game. Why don't I just have the computer make every decision for me? It's like
Right.
I want to put some of myself and have some fun with this. And part of that is making it personal and making it real to you.
Right, because at that point, if you're going to do that, you should just go on auto draft and let it automatically set for you every single week.
100%.
And and then you can prove one thing and one thing only, and that's that all your friends are stupider than a computer.
And computers are getting
Computer's
pretty
not even a
smart.
word, and I'm still smarter than a computer, right? Well, in some ways.
Smart's a relative term.
I have more instinct than any computer.
Ding. I'll give you that. 100%.
Um, but yeah, no, I mean, I definitely like. I'm excited for the year, and we'll talk about it here in a bit because I did a couple best ball drafts, and like
Oh, yes.
those are ones I was a risk taker, and I think the reason I was more willing to be a risk taker on those is because it's like $10 or $15 buy-ins, and it's not with people that I play with every single year. So it's like worst case I lose $25, best case some of my risks pay off, and I'm in the money big, right? But the competitive nature of me too, like if I draft somebody way too high with a couple of the leagues I'm in, I've done these people for 10 or 15 years. I'm never, ever going to hear the end of it.
That's
So I
interesting. I've
think I'm
never
more
thought
proud of
that
being a
thought.
risk taker when people that don't have my phone number are involved.
I'll tell you what, you don't trade Will Levis for Lamar Jackson if you're concerned about that. Or trade Lamar Jackson for Will Levis if you're concerned about what other people think.
And you certainly don't tell people who didn't know about it.
Oh, you know what? No risk it, no biscuit, my friend.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
But
But I
either
feel
way,
like,
that's what this is all about, right? Like
yeah.
you got to have a little bit of risk or where is the fun?
Yeah, I mean, it should be. It should be a little bit of risk. It should be fun, but there's obvious data things that you need to look at, but you got to dig in a little bit deeper to your point, right? Because
100%.
on top of just like how we think the player is going to go, if it has good favor with the coach, what about that running back who misses one block and the quarterback gets flattened? And maybe the quarterback doesn't get hurt, but there's a lot of coaches who will put a running back who can't pass block on the bench because the quarterback is, sorry, more important, you know?
And Bill Belichick was notorious for benching people after the tiniest mistakes, never mind a fumble. Like
Right.
you were running back and you fumbled, you were gone for pretty much the rest of the game most of the time. It was a very
Yeah.
rare occasion where he wasn't punishing pretty harshly.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I do feel like I understand you as a player a bit more, but I have a few other questions kind of understand more towards your approach. Like at this time of year, what are you doing as far as what content are you digesting? How are you keeping up with the league? What's your frequency?
My frequency's not as much as I would like it to be, probably more now that we're doing this,
Hmm.
right? Um and I mean, I have the ESPN app, like that's a gimme, right? I every day I check like all the sports, right? I big baseball and NFL guy,
Hmm.
check the news, check my team's players news, make sure I haven't missed any players that have moved around during the off season. I said that voluntary OTAs don't matter too much, and they don't, but like seeing who's showing out in voluntary OTAs so that I can keep a closer eye on them during the real practices that are coming up, as well as in the preseason. I really pick up the pace of everything in July because I'll start to like see what players have been doing and I'll watch tape. I do not generally tend to go rewatch any games from last year. Um, but I will watch tape, and then I watch as many preseason games as I possibly can. A, because I've been jonesing for football for so damn long, but B, because those rookie players, and you might know this, and of course this is me being a homer, but I've been big on Isaiah Likely since he was drafted by us in that first preseason, and I was big on Keaton Mitchell this year. because I keep a close eye on the preseason. Well, big on Keaton Mitchell last year, right? Because I keep a close eye on the preseason games and see what those rookies can do against potential, if not probable, starters at the NFL level. It doesn't tell the full story, but it tells enough of a story for me to know that maybe somebody's going to miss that. Keaton Mitchell had a great game preseason week 1, and then suddenly J.K. Dobbins decided, I'm going to stop holding out now because he knew that his job might be at risk otherwise, right?
Yeah. No, I was just thinking back because I want to definitively give you your flowers for that because I don't know that I have. But you were telling me, I thought it was actually earlier. I thought you were telling me around this time of year before Isaiah Likely's first year, you were like,
Yeah,
watch
yeah,
out for this dude. Like, he's catching everything. I was like, dude. And I've said exactly what you were saying. I'm like, Homer, get
right.
out of here. And I saw, I'm like, oh man, Scott was right. I feel bad that I did not give you your flowers on that. So here you are, my friend.
Well, I appreciate that. And you're right, it was. That was after we drafted him and before he played a single snap because I went back and watched the ECU tape.
Yeah, no, good call.
I appreciate it. He's probably going to be our third best wide receiver this year, and he's a tight end. So,
Who did you just pick up? Anything?
um, I don't know.
There was
I
some.
don't think we've picked up any wide
I thought you picked
receivers.
up a wide receiver. This is going to bug me, but I will look it up.
I'll multitask and look into it. I always multitask on this computer. That's why I have two monitors. But
Smart.
what about you? Like, what does it look like for you? Because I know we're doing a podcast right now, but I'm gonna throw myself under the bus. I'm not really a big podcast guy. I'm more of a reader than I am a watcher of almost every content that I consume.
So I'm a listener. I'm not really I'm a occasional watcher, but I'm a listener because I can do it very passively and I can get other stuff done. Like there are certain things that require deep thought that I cannot do it in, but there's a lot of stuff that I'm doing that is fairly straightforward and I can have that background noise. And oddly enough, my brain kind of gloms onto the stuff and I still hear it. So I listen to probably one a day. But I would say right before the preseason, as we start ramping up and like season previews start coming out and we start moving towards like redraft, I would say it increases pretty drastically, like one or two a day. But I have very specific podcasts that I will listen to, like the day before waivers. There's a podcast that I will listen to because they're running through waiver wire ads. But I focus on, and it's football guys, and I will promote them because I support all the things they do. But I need ones that go deeper. Like if you're playing with sharps, like I don't know about you, but most of the content I digest, they're like waiver wire ads. I'm like, whose league are you playing in?
Oh
Because
my god,
these people are not available anywhere I'm playing. Like
no.
I just it's so you have to dig a little bit deeper to find that stuff that's so I'm looking for people that just are not really owned by anybody. So that's a harder thing to find. So this is I think we've been moving a little bit slowly on this and some of the other ideas I had. I mean, for websites, I don't really do ESPN anymore. Um, I will still digest the podcast occasionally, but I do not. I usually do Bleacher Report for updating news, football guys. Um, Genuinely, and this will be a good entry point into our next conversation, is I hate the ESPN platform. Like ESPN's a billion-dollar company. We work in technology. Like I know what apps can do and how they should be friction-free and painless. And ESPN's app is just I hate it. It's okay because I know it inside and out, but it feels so limited as to
Yeah.
what it could be. So it's a huge point of frustration for me.
No, I agree. I agree. And that's not just for the ESPN app for scores and everything. I mean, that's usually what I use it for. And generally, like, what I'll do is I'll go to the ESPN app and I'll go to like NFL and then news, and then I'll see what comes up. And then I'll go look at like Bleacher Report or something else that I like more. I just use the ESPN as almost like my Twitter of, but I hate the ESPN fantasy app too.
That's what I meant to say. I don't hate the ESPN app on the whole. The ESPN fantasy app is the thing that drives me the most nuts.
Dude, it's so bad. Like, I remember it wasn't this league, but it was one league that I was taking over as commissioner. And I sent the invites to everybody, and it was Yahoo Fantasy, which is what I use universally.
Mhm.
Um, and somebody was like, dude, I've never used Yahoo Fantasy. Why can't we just use ESPN? I'm like, because ESPN sucks. And you know what that person texted me in week 2? I love the Yahoo Fantasy app
Uh,
because it's more seamless, it's easier to add drop, the layout looks better, the updates are better, they actually pull up correctly. It shows you if a player's hurt more frequently. It's simple, you would think, but the Yahoo Fantasy app is definitely the way to go for me.
which other ones have you used?
So I've used ESPN. NFL.com's fantasy app is so
Also
bad.
garbage. Also garbage.
Like it's so much worse than ESPN's. So I used to use that one when I was like younger and like was only in like one paid league, and I wanted to like have a couple more just to play around with, and they have a bunch of free leagues, so that's why I did that. But God, it's so horrifically bad. Um,
Again, between the ESPN and the NFL, the idea that these two companies can't invest money into making these apps top of the line is it's malpractice as far as I'm concerned.
well, and the fact that Yahoo has
Yeah,
because
we're
they're not a sports company.
no.
I don't,
I'm not even sure what they are. I think they're trying to be a sports company, and their fantasy content is really good. Like
yeah.
they invested money in this Matt Harmon who does reception perception. Like he does these breakdowns of receivers, but they invested a lot of money in him because he was really making a lot of waves in kind of fantasy circles. But they're putting a lot of money into it and doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, no, I mean they are like, and you'll see like if you do the Yahoo Fantasy draft and you do it on either platform, whatever pick you have, it'll tell you like they'll give you an announcer, and of course it's canned, right? But it's like they'll have a video for picks 1 through 12, or maybe even 14. Who the hell knows? I've never been in a 14-man league, and it's a minute and a half, but before 2 minutes before the draft, it comes up and it's like, oh, you got the third overall pick. Here's kind of what's been happening lately. Here's who you should look at taking. Here's who you should avoid. Like, even just small things like that, you know?
It doesn't even need to work. It's just the fact that like I've been on the ESPN app and I feel like there has been almost zero change except for adding that Watson feature, which no one asked for.
I know.
Like, so I appreciate Yahoo just at least making efforts and strides to doing this better. My favorite app is Sleeper, I would say. It's
Yeah.
mostly a dynasty app, but it's pretty great. But as far as redraft, I would say Yahoo is my favorite.
I'll need to check out Sleeper at some point because I also want to do a dynasty league, but I got to find a dynasty league that I can join, and that's a commitment because I'm gonna have to buy a team that's been like blown the hell up, basically.
Hey, once you commit to the rebuild, it's fun as hell. It's when you're in between that it's like this is horrible. But once you're like, you know what, I need to get rid of some people and I need to just get younger. It's just a fun project. Like you're not gonna win, but you're not thinking about it either. Like when you're in the middle, you're like, oh, maybe I have a shot, and then you have the middle of the year, you're like, I don't have a shot at all. Whereas
Right.
if you go into the year, you're like, I don't care at all. I'm just trying to rebuild my team and get something going here. I think it's freeing.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I really want to do that, but um, I know you also had I don't know if you had anything else on fantasy websites, analysts, apps, or anything like that, but we could also talk a little bit about current ADP if we wanted to.
Sure. Yeah, what do you got?
So I've got it pulled up right here from Fantasy Pros, and the first thing that leaps out to me is they have, and
Do
this
you
is
want to share? Do you want
ADP.
to share that?
I
Where
was
you?
wondering if I can. I guess we might get copyrighted, but also like we get like
Oh, that's
enough
right.
views to worry about it, so I guess it's fine. Um, you know what? All of this content is on fantasypros.com. Thank you, Fantasy Pros, for the content. I take no credit for it.
Appreciate you.
Um, yep. McCaffrey, easy. Lamb, yep. I mean, we've talked about the fact that he's basically Dak Prescott's only target, but he's going to get a ton of targets, especially in PPR, which is what I'm looking at. I can see Tyreek Hill, Jamar, Justin Jefferson. I mean, it's going to be a really wide receiver heavy first round based on this. I don't necessarily disagree with Brees Hall if he can stay healthy, which I think is a risk, or Bijan because he's got Kirk Cousins and Arthur Smith is no longer in Atlanta. This surprised me. Puka at wide receiver 6 really surprised me. Not because he didn't have a great year last year, but because there's still Cooper Kupp to contend with. Matthew Stafford is not getting any younger. And now they have Kyron Williams and they also have Blake Corum. So they're going to want to run the ball a lot more too. So I think Puka's way overvalued here.
I,
But I'll stop there.
I 100% agree. I think you are. This is a term I hear a lot that you're drafting them at their ceiling. Like, where's he supposed to go when you're drafting him at 9 behind Amon-Ra St. Brown? And to your point, Cooper Kupp is still there. And if he doesn't get injured, I don't care how good Puka is. Like the idea that he's going to live up to wide receiver, what,
6?
6?
Yeah.
That's wild to me. Like I couldn't agree more. Like there are who would I take? What's the lowest person you would take over Puka? Like I'm taking Drake London over him. I'm taking Garrett Wilson. I'm taking AJ Brown.
I'd take Devontae Adams over him. I think that's where I stop.
And he's going to get peppered with targets. Like
Yep.
I think it's really close between Olave and Puka, and I think with without injury, I think Olave has a higher ceiling.
As a player, I agree. Given who's going to be throwing passes to him, I disagree.
That's yeah. I mean, there is
Um,
that.
you put Matthew Stafford on the Saints or Chris
Oh,
Olave on the Rams and flip that script, I agree. I think
oh,
Olave is going to be a great player, and I think anybody on the Saints offense is begging for a quarterback who can throw the ball, who isn't named Derek Carr, and is not named Spencer Rattler. you know?
I would prefer Spencer Rattler over Derek Carr right now.
Yeah, well, he's a wild card, right? Like
Well,
he's
exactly.
somebody that could have some upside potential. With Carr, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get about 20 for 30, 175 to 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception.
But that's the thing. This is fantasy versus real life. Like bad quarterbacks can still be fun for fantasy. Like
Yeah.
Jameis Winston is a blast in
Oh
fantasy.
my God, he's so fun.
Um, what do you think about like? I think that's too high for IU. Like that,
Yeah, have they even signed a contract with him yet?
I have that is confused. Like you still have Debo to contend with. Like not.
I don't think
I
either.
loved I love I think Ayuk is a top 5 talent. Like I think he's a beast. But I just don't know how you put him there sharing the ball like that.
Well, yeah, sharing the ball like that. 'Cause, to your point, Ayuk's wide receiver 13, Samuel's wide receiver 15. For both of them to consistently perform, that effectively means at a minimum Brock Purdy's throwing for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and that's not including any throws to Christian McCaffrey or George Kittle or whoever the hell else they have at wide receiver. But I mean, even if you just add in McCaffrey and George Kittle, you can't expect all 4 players on the San Francisco 49ers offense that aren't named Brock Purdy to perform on a consistent basis. And I think Ayuk or Samuel is, and this happened last year, Ayuk or Samuel is going to have a good game. Kittle's going to be good for 4 to 7 catches, 50 to 80 yards, point 0.6 touchdowns per game or whatever. And
Mhm.
McCaffrey's going to be good for 50 yards receiving and 1 whole touchdown either receiving or rushing per game. So that means Ayuk or Samuel's going to have a rough game, or Purdy's going to have to throw for 4 touchdowns every freaking game,
Yeah.
which is not going to happen.
No. Not when you have McCaffrey. Like
No.
what do you think? Well, can you scroll down a bit more?
Yep.
Let's see what we got here. I would take so
Hmm.
hot take. I would probably, since we are talking redraft here, I would take Mike Evans over Devontae Adams.
Um, in PPR, yeah.
I mean, I think Evans will score more touchdowns than for the next 10 receivers ahead of him. Not
Yeah,
10, probably 8.
yeah, I was gonna say like we're that's getting into like AJ Brown territory, right? But for the most part, I agree. And he's consistent. Everybody wonders, is Mike Evans washed? Is he gonna fall off? Is he too old? And the fact of the matter is, the man has never had less than 1,000 yards receiving in a season, and he had one of his best statistical seasons in quite some time last year from a yards and touchdowns perspective. Baker Mayfield loves throwing to him.
Yeah, I mean, what? Yeah, and they're running that back. So I don't. I have zero reason. Like it seems like an easy play for Baker. They have a good connection. Like the idea that that's going to go down. Obviously, he's older, so there could be an injury, but I just don't. I don't see him falling off a cliff. It didn't look like
Yeah.
it last year.
Well, and speaking of falling off a cliff, Devon Achan at RB7 is insane to me.
So okay, we are. This is. I don't have the numbers to back this up, but does this feel insanely? And I'm good. I feel very disrespectful right now. So we will get back to your point. Does this feel insanely wide receiver heavy, even more than usual? Like this
Um,
number seven running back is going at what number? It's like
Number seven
20.
running back is going at. Oh, there's Devontae Walker. Oh, Devon Achan. 24.
So the
Yeah,
end of the
but I mean,
second
it makes sense. First of all, this is based on a small sample size, right? Because not a lot of people have drafted.
there.
But it makes sense when you think about the fact that the running back market, they're not as valued as they used to be. If
So
you don't have Christian McCaffrey or Brees Hall or Bijan, I mean, Jameer Gibbs is a bit of a question mark, right?
for
Like
me, yeah.
you start to look at RBBC. Like most teams have a running back by committee at this point, and then I think that's part of the problem because like I'm sure you noticed what I was doing when I saw Achane was at RB7. I'm like, how the hell is Devon Achane at RB7 and Raheem Mostert's at RB28 after what Raheem Mostert did last year?
Give me all the Raheem Mostert at that value.
At that value,
Mm.
absolutely, dude. I think he's way undervalued. I'd take him in the eighth round,
Yeah, I'm
which
not paying up
technically I
for
guess
eight.
this is basically eighth round for a 12 man, but I would take him at like 80 if he was around.
I mean, so if you were going zero RB, like you could even pick him up. So you could pick him up for sure in the seventh. Holy cow, James Conner is at 95. See, this is wild. Like this is, so
Yeah,
I
but
agree with
I
you.
think
Like I think
there's
looking at ADP at this time is kind of silly because
I mean, yeah,
wow,
but
like
to your
James Conner
point, like
last year was
it's conversations
amazing.
that yeah, he was good. So
But yeah, I
I don't
agree with
know.
you.
It'll be interesting. I had some interesting experiences too on the best ball drafts. Because I think the ADP is so skewed and everybody's opinions are so different.
So I have a question for you. Do we have a way to pull up your team to discuss it?
There might be. I will try to do that while we continue talking because I've literally so I did it on Underdog,
Yeah.
which is it used to be my go-to sports betting app, right? But I've never done it on a desktop, so I'll check right now while we continue talking.
But I have
So
a question for you as far as, and this came up when we were discussing the future of our league. What is your favorite format? Like, if you're getting into a league and you can create the optimal roster spots, um, number of teams in the league, like, what's it look like?
I like a 10-man league. My experience with a 12-man league is that it gets too competitive. Um,
Two can
like you're not going to get anybody on waivers. There's going to be almost literally nobody for you to pick up. One bad injury, Nick Chubb goes down, your season's over because Jerome Ford's already been picked up, right? And he was picked up in the draft because somebody was being speculative.
Hmm.
So I prefer 10 man just so like there's a little bit of buffer. I mean, there has to be. Um, I like one QB, two running back, two wide receiver, tight end, two flexes. I also do like super flex leagues. I think they're fun. I just don't see a lot of people that like want to do a super flex league. I know you had mentioned wanting to do one, and what I'm going to do in our league is I'm going to shoot for having hopefully two 10-man leagues. Last year we had a 12-man league, and we had to exclude two people because we didn't have. I mean, one of them was like a chief officer who's like, "Yeah, I'll fill out the spot," and then somebody else wanted it, right? So like he was like, "Don't worry about it." But
You get to
still,
play in both?
you what?
Do we get to
I
play in
think
both?
I don't see why not. I think we could
Yeah.
say, hey, we're doing two leagues. There's 20 spots total. Four of them are gone because I'm in both.
Hell yeah.
Um, because Superflex is fun for sure, but that's my ideal is two running back, two wide receiver, two flex, and that's wide receiver. running back, tight end, and then one tight end. I do like kickers just because I know I'm an old head there, but if there's one player that I want on my team for
Justin
the
Tucker.
Baltimore Ravens, it's Justin Tucker. So,
Hey, no, there is no format shaming here. It's like I've been driven nuts by kicker because I have no idea how to I spend a lot of time trying to think about my lineups and how the matchups and all of this, and then I get to kicker and defense and I'm just tired. Like, I just don't
yeah,
want to I don't want to do that extra work. It's not fun for me. But I don't it is what it is. I'll play in those leagues. I don't care. For me, it got to, like the Superflex is crucial for me because it got to a point where you could draft and win in a redraft league and you could wait forever on quarterbacks. Like you hardly ever had to really invest. Like I won, I won several leagues just drafting like quarterback in the 10th round or something like that. Like just waiting, waiting, waiting because it didn't matter. Like even the lower quarterbacks still get a decent score to kind of float you for a little bit, and that wasn't fun. I do so I think in playing a 10 team league, I would definitely prefer to have two quarterbacks at that point because, if you're only going down to the number 10 quarterback, you still have a pretty decent quarterback. So I just like actually I like any variations that are going to change up how we approach the league. Although I played in a two tight end league last year, like a two tight end premium league where tight ends got 1.5 points per catch, and everybody else got a half point. And that was an experience
yeah, that's
because I'm carrying tight ends that would never even see. Like, I'm having to get backups for tight ends.
yeah, that's rough.
That's wild.
Um, I mean, I tight end is my favorite position in football,
Really?
at least on offense. Like tight end is my favorite position. Todd Heap was the first jersey I ever owned. And I love them as players. I think they're very versatile, and they have to be to fill a full role of what a tight end should be. Looking at you, Travis Kelsey, learn to freaking run block. Um, but a two tight end league is wild. I did pull up my best ball drafts if you wanted to look at them real quick.
Nice. Yeah. 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 This is your first best ball draft?
First and second, and I'll show you the order in which I went and how my strategy kind of changed because and it was fun to do. Don't get me wrong. So I did a $10 one and a $25 one, and I'm gonna win overall. I'm gonna get first place in both and get $16 million, and
Hell yeah.
then yeah, it's perfect.
Nice.
But I'll go ahead and screen share if I can.
Yeah,
Yep.
and as we go through this, I think it would be instructive to understand how you're approaching it compared to how you approach redraft, like and how it varied.
It'll be interesting to see if I did it any differently. That's the thing. Maybe I should have, and maybe I learned a little bit from the first one.
Nice.
But so from the first one, I had second overall pick, so I went CD Lamb. Like he's gonna be peppered with targets. This is,
Yeah.
I believe, a half PPR. And then the good and bad thing about having second overall pick or first overall pick is my next pick was a 23, so I went RB0, and I went ahead and snagged Devontae Adams. Um, and then
He was
from
your
there,
second pick?
you what?
He was your second pick?
Yeah, 23. So I
Okay.
picked it 2, 23, 25, and so on. Or I think 25. Yeah, okay, 26. And then next, I went really RB0. I snagged Sam Laporta. A little bit higher than his ADP, but Goff loved throwing to him last year. He was just a rookie. I'm pretty high on the kid. So I went ahead and snagged him.
I'm not taking, if I'm skipping running back in the first two rounds, I'm not taking another one probably to fourth or fifth.
Right. So, and then at the end of the fourth round is when I went ahead and snagged Rashad White a little bit above his projections. But, and then my next pick, yeah, should be 71. I snagged David Montgomery. Oh, no, T. Higgins, 47 to 50. So I snagged T. Higgins. I know there's the whole contract thing going on with him, but I do think that he's going to be solid. And then it should be 71 next. Yeah, 71, snag David Montgomery. No picks after Caleb Williams. So this was the problem I had. I had a full team.
Mhm.
I had good wide receivers, a good tight end, pretty solid running backs. I don't know why David Montgomery went that low. I know Jahmyr Gibbs exists, but they're different types of backs. And Montgomery had a really good year last year, and he's still young.
They love
Um,
him. They love Montgomery in Detroit.
yeah. And they love Gibbs too, but for different reasons, and they're not going to just get rid of Montgomery. So I think I got some value here. ADP at 74 for David Montgomery is wild. But then I'm like, shit, I don't have any quarterbacks. And there was a premium on quarterbacks because at 74, the best available was Caleb Williams.
Do you remember who else was around or was there at that time?
I can try to find out. View full draft. Let's see who else was there at the time. Um, Not right now. Okay. So here's the completed, I think.
I would think so.
Yeah. Okay. So we need to go to 74. So Dak Prescott was taken at 69. Jordan Love was taken at 61. Kyler Murray was taken at 57. Richardson at 54 with an injury question mark. Stroud at 49. Mahomes at 46. I was gonna go Lamar. I was gonna go Lamar for sure, but right before I picked at 47, somebody snagged him at 41. So I say right before, right? But I was eyeing him, and then Jalen Hurts went. Josh Allen went. Wow, so Josh Allen was the first quarterback in this draft to go. It went Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Lamar, Mahomes. Mahomes went the pick before me. I would have snagged him over Rashad White without a doubt in my mind. But there was just this huge run on quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Like, it was wild.
Who was the next one after you
Joe
took
Burrow.
Williams?
Joe Burrow.
You
I don't
really?
trust him. I don't
Okay.
trust him. I never have. He's a hell of a quarterback, and he's burned the Ravens before, but he is injury prone. He is coming off of an arm injury from last year now, and he's had multiple leg injuries. And at least for 3 weeks out of the season, the first three specifically, he's going to be bad. It's just what he does. He takes a while to warm up. So I avoid Joe Burrow. I mean, that, granted, now that I'm thinking about it, like, he probably would have been more value than Caleb Williams. But also what we've talked about is that Williams has so many weapons around him that I think he's going to perform in some way.
Oh, by no means do by no means do I think Williams is a bad pick. I think rookies can often be great values in best ball. I was just curious what else was what I have yet to do a best ball, so I'm curious what is around, like this is fascinating.
Yeah, for sure. And then after Williams, I didn't pick for a while. Who was next? Yeah, so then I went Keon Coleman and Jalen Warren. I do think Jalen Warren's going to do well. As much as we badmouth Arthur Smith in this house, he does love his running backs, and Jalen Warren did have a pretty good year last year, and I just don't think Najee's the it. I
I'd feel
think
better
Jalen
if you
Warren.
didn't bring Cordero Patterson to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but Cordell Patterson's like 50 years old.
But he's still a pain in the ass when you own those running backs. That's
That's
what
true.
Bijan owned last year. Trust me. Every time you watch Cordero Patterson get the ball, you're like, what the?
Yeah, so my take on best ball, especially anything past starting lineup, which is where we're at now, is who do I think by the second half of the year is might supplant some of these players? And I see a world where Jalen Warren maybe has a better game than David Montgomery.
Hmm.
Because this is set it and forget it, right?
Yep.
So, like, who do I think might in the second half of the year is the mentality I went for all of this? Keon Coleman, maybe he'll start doing well, and maybe he'll build a connection with Josh Allen. He wouldn't be a week one starter, but I don't have to worry about that, you know?
Mhm.
J.K. Dobbins, we know Roman loves J.K. Dobbins, and we know J.K. Dobbins is a hell of a running back if he can stay healthy, and I really hope he does. And I
That's a
got him
big
at
if.
67.
That's a big if.
Yeah, but I got him at
No,
167.
no,
You
low investment for sure.
know? Josh Palmer, I mean, if the running back market was so crazy, dude, I had to take Justin Herbert. So I was like, well, if I'm going to take Justin Herbert, I may as well snag Josh Palmer too, because the only way Herbert's going to have a good year is if he's throwing the ball to Josh Palmer.
I
So I
don't
went
think
ahead and snagged
Palmer's.
him.
I don't think that's a bad. I think that's a decent flyer because they're
Yeah,
so
it was
little.
a flyer for sure. I took Demario Douglas on a flyer, Wandale Robinson, Tank Bigsby. But this draft, this second one, is the one that I think I went better. And the mentality I went to both with is, standard for me mentality of fill out a full starting lineup first and then fill in players. But it was different because now it's like I don't really have to worry about buys as much, and I don't really have to worry about like handcuffs because it's just best player from all these, right?
A hundred
So,
percent. And might I add, like, so I noticed that you have Gabe Davis on your team,
hmm
which when you're playing regular fantasy, Gabe Davis is one of the biggest nightmares to own because you don't know when to start him.
right,
That's what makes best ball so fun is that this is where these people shine because you don't have to worry about it. Because he's going to
right,
start on those days that he has blow up weeks. He's automatically in
it's
your
already
lineup,
there,
and the other ones you don't care.
right. And actually, looking at these wide receivers, almost all of my bottom wide receivers, actually every single one of my wide receivers except for CeeDee Lamb, I took after the ADP. So I
Really?
think the ADP is a little bit skewed towards wide receivers right now because I took a few running backs below their ADP. I took White, Montgomery, Dobbins below his ADP. I took Williams way below because I just needed a damn quarterback. And then tight ends, I did also snag Cole Kmet and Isaiah Likely. Because again, best ball, right? Kmet's
Yep.
gonna have a game where he's gonna get a touchdown or two.
100%.
Isaiah Likely is gonna have a game where he goes off for 6 catches for 80 yards, even if Mark Andrews is on the field. So I think that's solid too. And the flexes in here include tight ends. So for all I know, Isaiah Likely is gonna supplant T. Higgins one week.
Uh,
Not like
Entirely
it's not
possible.
likely, pun intended, but it could happen, right?
Well done,
Um,
sir.
so thank you. And this was my second one. I feel better about this one. Also, this one I think I just had more reasonable human beings because Dak Prescott went to me at 95, where in this draft he went to somebody else at like 69. So these 12 people were so freaking high on quarterbacks, and over here I'm like, damn, I got to snag Dak at 95. That is a huge value.
Yeah, so that's the fun part that makes it feel like when you're doing these best ball things, it feels like you're kind of playing a little bit of a video game because it's
Yeah,
really just playing how you're playing off other people. The best way to play best ball, in my opinion, is to be water. Like
yeah,
be prepared for anything to happen, like exactly what you're talking about right there.
yeah, for sure. Because also in this one, like I took Keep Mitchell a little high, but like I remember Mitchell went like 140 or something in this one, right? But I ended up with pick two again. And because I didn't want to be repetitive and because I do like Tyreek Hill a lot, I took Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I handcuffed them next to each other. So that if only one of them has a good game, I've still got Chris Godwin and Gabe Davis to fall back on. It was a little bit more of a homer year. I did snag Bateman. I did snag Devontae Walker, but I feel so much better about my quarterbacks and running backs, and for that matter, my tight ends, where I have Andrews and Cole Kmet.
Interesting. So
Um,
I like this team exponentially more. The only place this team gives me concerns is running back.
Running back,
Oh, I have so Kyron Williams already has foot issues right now. Like he's not
yeah,
doing OTAs because he has foot issues, and he has a history of injuries. And foot issues with wide receivers and running backs just make me nervous. It's nothing to do with his skill level. It's not. It's just a vibe thing that I get from. It's like, why did they draft Blake Corum the way they did? Like, I just don't. I'm nervous about how they're going to use him. Like, if the foot's fine, are they going to try to do more of a split? Like, he got so much work last year, which is part of the reason why he was able to flourish the way he's did. So I would be nervous about Williams, but like, I love the receivers, love the tight end. I definitely like Dak like better than, and to get Dak at 95,
oh yeah,
like I like all of that. I think you have actually three decent quarterbacks that you got a good value. Like, yeah, big fan. I
yeah.
love
I feel
Pacheco also. Like, I think that's a good pick.
I
Um,
think Aaron Jones is going to be better than his ADP. I think Eckler is going to be
Agreed.
better than his ADP, and I just hope that Keaton Mitchell. I will tell you, and I think anybody would. It's not just me being a homer. I always have to preface that. But if and when Keaton Mitchell comes back healthy from injury, the Baltimore Ravens running game is going to be a horrifying thing between Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, and Keaton Mitchell. He's not going to be back until I think he's starting the season on the pup list at this point, right?
Well,
But
isn't this
he's
one of
not
those
going to be
injuries where it's the year after the year?
what?
Like, he's not going to be Keaton Mitchell this year, is he?
What do you mean?
Well, usually, so that type of the MCL. What did he tear? He tore both MCL and ACL,
Oh, it
right?
was rough. His whole knee bent backwards.
So usually, like it's not. Same thing with Javonte Williams. Like Javonte Williams was back last year and healthy, but he didn't look like Javonte Williams because
Yeah.
he was still working back through the injury. All the statistics from I don't know how long ago suggest that he's going to be much better this year because the knee will be much more functional and fluid. And I would think that it would be similar for Mitchell. Like for that reason, I'm considering that Ali guy pretty heavily that the Ravens invested in.
Yeah. Well, he's hurt too. You know that, right?
I didn't know that. That's why we do this.
What's it's like Mahersha Ali. Okay, no,
No,
that's
no. I thought it would begin with an R.
Ravens draft.
Raheem Ali.
He's out of Marshall. That's where I got the M from,
Uh,
right? But I know who you're talking about, but I'm pretty sure that he was hurt. Ravens draft tracker, Rasheen. Okay, Google.com, Rasheen Ali. I'm pretty sure he was injured
can't
last year.
imagine it would be as
Biceps.
serious as Keaton Mitchell's. I mean, that was. Oh yeah, like
Dealing with a bicep injury. Harbaugh gave reporters some insight into his progress. They said he's going to be able to do more and more as we go here in the offseason. I'm sorry, Coach Harps. I'm sorry, but like your injury updates drive me nuts. You're so non-committal. Like for all we know, Rasheen Ali's going to be out for the first 8 weeks, but he's going to be doing more as the offseason progresses. Does that mean that he's like picking up his water bottle, like to take a sip? You
you're
know,
not gonna get a lot of sympathy from me. I've been dealing with Bill Belichick updates for 20 years.
and you're not going to get a lot of sympathy from me because
I
in those
don't.
20 years, y'all won 6 freaking Super Bowls.
Yeah, those days are
Um,
gone, though, my friend.
so yes, Ollie is hurt and Harbaugh's been non-committal. So in Senior Bowl, he ruptured his bicep tendon. So in April he did.
Sounds painful.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was. So FYI,
Fair.
that does concern me a little bit because we basically have like Derrick Henry and
Is Justice coming back?
Justice Hill. I wanted to say Buck Allen, but he's just a website meme at this point.
Wow. Wow. That's a blast from the past. I haven't.
Dude, I have a Buck Allen jersey.
That's amazing. How many people
Uh,
know it's that Allen?
Probably none, but I also, dude, it was like $20 online. Like, um, so there's this meme on Reddit, like it's just like, uh oh, you moron, you got totally bucked, and there's just like a copy paste like joke about how Buck Allen is the answer to everything, and people still do it to this day, right? So last offseason, I'm like browsing the NFL shop, and it's like Javorius Allen jersey, $20, extra large, and I'm like, I'm not an extra large man, but for $20, I'll buy a Ravens jersey for the memes. So I've got a big ass Buck Allen jersey in my closet.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So I feel better about this one for sure. We'll see. We'll provide updates as it goes along.
So
Nobody
you
here.
think last let's end that conversation about that best ball team with the only like I love that team. The only so you think Austin Eckler has something in the tank?
Yeah.
I saw some videos last year that suggested otherwise.
But I just feel like this is not a thumbs up moment, AI. This always happens. I feel like he wasn't utilized, and there wasn't good blocking. There wasn't receiving threats consistently. I don't think he has something in the tank to run down your throat, but I think he can still catch 6 to 8 passes and get some yards.
So the only concern I would have about that is that historically not only do rookie running backs, no, pardon, rookie quarterbacks throw to the running backs at a much lower rate. Running quarterbacks also throw to the running backs at a much lower rate.
But
And
not when they're running for their lives and just don't want to get hit.
well, I mean, how long is that going to last?
It's fair. We'll
Not that we
see.
root for injury. Yes, disclaimer every time. We are not rooting for injury in
Right.
any way, shape, or form.
But I mean, I also took him at 122.
Oh no, this
Yeah.
this conversation was meant to say. I don't know that it was a bad investment. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on Eckler because I know some people are drafting him much higher than that, and I am out.
Nah, if I went RB0, I might take him like in the 10th round as my RB3 or 4, like as a flyer. But like that's talking about me going RB0 and rocking Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and Lamar Jackson, and then somehow Devontae Adams falls to me too. Like that's the scenario where Eckler's in my starting lineup from day one.
That's fair. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
God, that would be a hell of a team, wouldn't it?
I, I mean, I felt like the team you just showed me was pretty strong. Like you had Mark Andrews, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. I love the Godwin pickup. Like Gabe Dave in best balls, amazing. I thought the quarterbacks were great. Like
I
it's a
feel
pretty
good
strong
about it.
team, dude.
I feel good about it. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at with everything best ball wise, and I'm gonna start getting my other drafts ready to go and do some more mock drafts. But I do have to run here in a minute. So is there anything else you wanted to chat through before I go get my ass kicked in tennis?
No, I want. This is a great conversation. I think the next time we chat should probably be a best ball continuation and discuss strategy a little bit more, like how it's evolving. I do a so I love drafting, so I do a ton of best ball drafts, and I will do the cheaper ones that are like $1,
Yeah,
and I'll just keep doing because I don't even at the end of the year I don't really care how much I make. I came out above water at the end of last year, but it's just drafting for me, especially with basketball, is kind of like crack. Like it's just so much fun. I love drafting. So
yeah,
I would love to chat about kind of how you see your approach changing or how mine does as I go forward. So that'd be a good chat for next time.
yeah, for sure, man. I'll do a
Cool.
couple more, and then if you want to do one too, then we can chat through our results and see because I think the approach will also inform what we can expect from a fantasy perspective for our like
Absolutely.
redraft weeks too.
Well, and you get a good feel for what the public is thinking about players. Like I think that's the biggest thing that gave
Right.
me getting to ready for redraft was like knowing what to do as they got later in the draft. Because if you don't do a lot of mock drafts, best balls are good for kind of getting you in that feel of who's going to be around at these times. It's not the same every time, but you still get used to it.
Yeah, and mock drafts feel like a waste of time to me because there's no win at the end. And right now, I'm gonna have $16 million in my bank account in January. And I'm a bit of a gambler, so it's like, all right, let's play.
Roll them dice. All right,
Yeah,
bud.
exactly.
Well, great combo. You have an excellent evening.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. You too.
Be well.
All right, later, buddy.
Bye.
Appreciate y'all.